speakers, distinguished guests, esteemed professors, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant morning to all of you. First of all, on behalf of 4 Political Science 3, we would like to extend our gratitude to all of you who gathered here today of choices and changes, constitutional change in the Philippines and the new Bangsamoro regional government. I would like to welcome the presence of our honorable guest speakers, Assistant Professor Nassef Manabilang Adiong, our seminar coordinator, Mr. Ronald Castillo, our ever-supportive Professor, Mr. Justin Jairo Manalo, and to my block, for Political Science 3. Truly without them, this event would not be possible. During his campaign, then-candidate Rodrigo Duterte promised to push for the transition of the country's unitary form of government into a federal system. With an en banc session of the Consultative Committee, the proposed federal charter was approved with new provisions distinct from the current constitution. President Duterte also signed the Bangsamoro Organic Law, which led to the creation of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, a home to our Muslim brothers and sisters. This is an effort to help the Moro people to resolve their grievances and concerns, many of which stem from disputes on ancestral land and decades of neglect. In this regard, this seminar seeks to provide an avenue for Tomasians to deepen their understanding on the ethnic conflict in Mindanao and the constitutional reform in the Philippines, provide an adequate knowledge on plight of the Moro indigenous population situated in Mindanao in order to reignite our social responsibility as future leaders of the nation, and enable the Tomasians and various students to stimulate critical thinking and value the significance of constantly investing on knowledge. So, without further ado, let us now be enlightened on how these historic events affect our political system and forward peace across the country. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much, Ms. Maglana. Now let us turn to the screens for a video presentation.
Hindi ko na mamaya sa may break pa tayo. Wala. Tuloy dito eh.
So now let us be enlightened and let us welcome our first speaker who will be introduced by Mr. John Renz Gilua, the President of the Political Science Forum.
Good morning. Our first speaker is well established in the field of academia and known for his achievements and various publications. He took his master's in international studies at the University of the Philippines, Diliman in 2009 and finished his doctorate in international relations at the Middle East Technical University in Turkey in 2016. Currently, he is an assistant professor at the Institute of Islamic Studies, University of the Philippines, Diliman, and professorial lecturer of international studies in Miriam College. He is also the founder of various academic and professional organizations, including COIRIS, or International Relations and Islamic Studies Research Cohort, and Philippine International Studies Organization. At present, he is the editor of different journals and press publications such as Brill Publishers, Palgrave Macmillan, Gerlach Press, and DLSU Publishing House, to name a few. As of February 2019, he published 47 peer-reviewed books, edited volumes, journal articles, and web-based publications from his research and teaching interests, such as Muslim governance in the Philippines and political interaction of Muslim societies with Western modernity. Last year, he was awarded by the Outstanding Young Men and Women or TOYM Awards in International Relations and was also given commendation from the Philippine Senate. At present, he works as the Chair of Governance and Policy Committee of the AFP Civil Relations.
With Muslims' experiences, um, talk about the 1935 Montevideo Convention and the duties and responsibilities of the state, where a state must have a government, a territory, a citizen, and also what they call a very, very loose term, which is, I think it's very vague if we're going to analyze what does it mean by sovereignty. There are various differences. Many higher scholars, and I would say also political scientists, have concocted that the birth of the state system started with the Westphalian system in 1648 between the Holy Roman Empire and also with other princes, German princes. Some would say that it started with the 1555 Peace of Augsburg, or some would say it had started way over before the Peace of Augsburg in 1555, which is the 1111 Treaty of Concordat in Europe. But all of the experiences, the empiricism of European polity is quite different with the Muslims. Mongolian had destroyed the Muslim civilizations in late 12th century. And also, aside from that, the emergence of the Ottoman Empire from, I would say, 13th century until 1922, the year that the last caliphate was abolished by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the father of the modern Republic of Turkey. There are very, very different postulations and perspective between Western European, Euro-American polity and also with Muslim polity. Let's take a look at the elements of the nation-state system, because we, the Philippines, were so very, very enamored and we're so very, very impacted and influenced by American polity, political configuration, which I think that one of our advocacies in UP and also together with my friends is to produce indigenous homegrown analysis of production of knowledge. Just a second. Right. So we are trying to advocate homegrown analysis or indigenous production of knowledge, how different social sciences could have its own indigenized production of knowledge. Take a look, for example, at Zul Salazar Pantayong Pananaw in history, and also in other social sciences such as the Philippine Studies or Filipinolohia, and also Psicologia Filipino. But how come political science have never been indigenized? How come Filipinos have never introduced the Filipino perspective of politics? How come no Filipino scholars have ever been, produced something that is very, very, I would say, dependent on the locality? I wouldn't say Philippines per se, because there are various different localities. If we're going to take a look, go to Cordillera, they have their own political configuration there. Go to Visayas and go to Mindanao. But when you mention Manila, how come non-Muslim scholars, non-Filipino scholars have produced localized knowledge on political science? Now, going to the elements of state system, let's take, for example, authority. How authority is seen by the Westerners. It's very, I would say, anthropomorphic. But if you're going to compare the authority lens in the West, they say that the kings have absolute power. It has divine power, which is very different with the sultans, with the Muslim leaders. The sultan in a sultanate has no absolute power. The sultan is checked and balanced by an assemblage of Muslim scholars, especially if, for example, if a sultan would like to arbitrarily use the state funding, but the sultan needs the consent of the assemblage of Muslim scholars for him to even use the state funding. So the authority of the sultan is always being checked and balanced by different assemblages of Muslim scholars within the polity of Muslims of the Ottoman Empire. Another example, let's say territoriality, which is not the Muslim views of political governance. Muslim views of political governance is embedded within the concept of CR, SIYAR in Latinized, which is always between the relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims. Or we would also say that the Muslim views of the international or the globality is always at the spectrum of order, world order, in contrast with the West, which they always talk about territory, because that was what has been concocted during the Westphalian Treaty, that the Holy Roman Empire, whoever is the prince of that region, then the religion of the prince would subsume that the citizens or the subjects would also follow or comply to the religious standing of the leader of that region, which is very different because in the territorial aspect of Muslims, they have different purviews. As you know, that there are two, I would say, sectarian groups within the Muslim civilization. We have the Sunni, which is the majority Muslims in the world, and we have the Shia, in the modern context represented by the Islamic Republic of Iran. In the Sunni jurisprudence of territory, they always love to talk about the 8th century juristic interpretation of territoriality between the abode of Islam or the Darul Islam and the abode of war or Darul Harb. Are there any Muslims in the audience? No Muslims, members of the Moros or converts? But in Philippine perspective, they would say that they are not converts, but they prefer to be called Balik Islam or reverts, which in my view, it's a little bit preposterous to even think about reverting to another religion. So you have these two abodes of Islam, the abode of Islam and the abode of war in the territorial schema of Sunni Muslims. In the Shia Muslims, territoriality for them is quite different. It's primarily embedded in the Quran. The Quran is the sacred scripture, but I wouldn't say it's a scripture because Quran means recite, recitation, as God through the angels revealed the message to the humanity through Prophet Muhammad. So it's like a continuous tradition of revelations. First, God's message was revealed to Jews, sa mga Hudyo. That's why they have the Torah. The first 5 chapters of the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, from Genesis, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, that constitute the Jewish revelations. And then you have the Gospels of Jesus Christ, also revealed based on the Muslim traditions. That's the reason why Muslims always refer to non-Muslims, such as the Christians and the Jews, and also the Sabians, as part of the people of the book, or Ahlul al-Kitab, meaning that the message, the revelation of God is bestowed to them in a continuous tradition, and the in Islam, in Arabic, he is termed as Prophet Isa. And there in the Quran, there is a there is a dedicated chapter to the mother of Jesus, the chapter on Maryam, the chapter of Mama Mary in the Quran. Now, so you have these different perspectives of how Muslims think of their political configuration compared with the West. It is also we also need to think about what does it mean by sovereignty, by territorial sovereignty, which is a very, very loose term. If you're going to ask some social scientists, theologians, philosophers, they have different understanding of sovereignty. understanding of St. Thomas Aquinas in his Summa Theologica is quite similar to the classical understanding of Muslims when they talk about sovereignty. In the classical sense of, in the Aquinas understanding of sovereignty, it's always about the welfare of the humanity, which is very similar to the understanding of the classical Muslim scholarship. And they call it the hakimiyya, meaning common good or public welfare. That is the pre-colonial understanding or the medieval understanding of sovereignty. But it all changes with the European experiences of 30 Years' War, the 8 Years' War that took place in Europe before they all have agreed and signed a treaty called the Peace of Westphalia in 17th century. Now, I'm going to talk about how Muslims in the Philippines that have never been discussed in the public space, and even in the public space, but also in the academic space, even during the negotiations that took place between the Philippine government and with their counterpart, the MILF, the entire city of Sulu had happened because of this element that I'm going to talk about. And it's very, very, I think, dangerous at this moment in time, especially that they have already signed the Bangsamoro regarding law, that they have marginalized this important element. And this element is, I think, the thing that should be blamed why Filipino Muslims have been radicalized, they have these extremist views. Have exacerbated the radicalism, the extremism among the youth, among the Filipino Muslim youth. And this is what we call, even in the Western literature, as Salafi. Have you heard about the word Salafi? Wahhabi. Wahhabi from Saudi Arabia. colonial era, um, the outstanding propensity of these legal, cultural interpretation of Islam is very prominent in the Arab world. And these Salafi understanding of Islam have contributed to the radical minds of Filipino Muslims. Now, Salafi or Salafia, widely misunderstood in both the Western and Muslim worlds, is quite a complex term denoting various conceptualizations, especially which philosophies apply to practice. Salafis are directly not Wahhabis. If you're going to say Wahhabi, it is an orthodox that emerged in Saudi. Three Muslim generations known as Al-Salaf al-Sali in all of their life world system, including beliefs, acts, norms, and ritual performances. Their aim, that's the reason why sometimes they might be also be called as the Puritans, as you might say the English Puritans in the music, certain music, even the voice of women are forbidden, haram. That's the reason why if you go, I have an anecdote of my friend who participated in a conference. I would say it's a seminar organized by Saudis and their cohorts in Manila, the Salafi cohorts. She is